The heavy doors opened with a sound like grinding stone. Cold air rushed inside, carrying the smell of old dust and strange perfumes. The human was pushed forward by two armored guards, their hands gripping his arms like iron. His boots scraped against the polished floor as he stumbled into a hall so vast that the ceiling vanished into shadows. Strange crystals lined the walls, glowing faint blue, casting long shadows across the figures waiting inside. Dozens of aliens stood in silence, their jeweled masks glittering under the light. They whispered to one another in voices that sounded like knives scraping glass. At the end of the hall was a throne of living crystal. It pulsed slowly, like it had a heartbeat of its own. On it sat the Countess. She looked young, too young for her eyes. Her skin was smooth and pale, her hair flowing like liquid silver, but her gaze was sharp and heavy, as if it carried centuries. She leaned forward, studying the human, as if he was both an insect and a treasure. The whispers around him grew louder, but when she raised her hand, silence fell instantly. The human felt his stomach twist. He did not know why he was here. He had been captured during the mining raid, dragged through tunnels, thrown into a cage, and now, this. His heart pounded so loudly he thought everyone could hear it. He tried to stand tall, but the weight of all those masked eyes crushed him. The Countess finally spoke, her voice smooth but carrying something dark beneath it. "He is the one," she said softly, yet her words echoed through the chamber like thunder. "He carries what I need." The aliens bowed low as if her words were sacred. The guards shoved him to his knees, and the crystal floor felt freezing through his clothes. He clenched his fists, trying not to show fear, but the Countess smiled as if she could read every thought in his mind. "You wonder why you are here," she continued, stepping down from her throne. Her gown shimmered as though it was woven from light itself. Each step made the crystals in the walls thrum, answering her presence. "You think you are just a miner, a man of no worth, but inside you lies something my people cannot create, cannot steal from the stars. Only your kind carries it, only you." The human's mouth went dry. He wanted to ask what she meant, but his voice refused to work. She walked closer until she stood just above him, her perfume filling his lungs, sweet and heavy, almost choking. She placed a long finger under his chin and forced him to look up at her. Her touch burned, not with heat, but with some strange energy that made his skin crawl. "Your body hides the secret of eternal youth," she whispered. "Your blood sings with the force of life itself, and I will drink from it." Gasps filled the hall. Some aliens lowered their heads as if they feared her words, while others watched with hungry interest. The human's heart hammered. Eternal youth. His body. He shook his head, pulling away from her hand, but the guards pressed him down harder. The Countess laughed, soft and cruel. "Do not resist. You are not the first of your kind brought here, but you are. Rare. Stronger. Your blood will not just feed me, it will renew me." She stepped back, her gown swirling around her legs, and raised her arms. The throne behind her pulsed brighter, and the crystals on the walls began to hum louder. The floor itself seemed alive, responding to her power. The human felt trapped like a rabbit before a wolf. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to fight, to do anything, but the guard's grip was like stone. The Countess turned and addressed her court. "Tonight begins a new age," she declared. "I will not wither, I will not fade, for the strength of man will keep me young." The aliens cheered, their voices a chilling chorus. The human closed his eyes, sweat dripping down his forehead, his chest rising and falling fast. He had never felt so powerless. But as fear filled him, another thought cut through. If she needed him alive, then he was not broken yet. He still had time. The Countess looked back at him, her smile wide and hungry. "Take him to the chamber," she ordered. "Prepare him." The guards yanked him up and dragged him across the glowing floor. He struggled, twisting against their grip, but their claws dug into his arms. The doors at the far side opened, revealing a passage lit by flickering violet light. As he was pulled into the darkness, he turned one last time. The Countess was watching, her eyes shining with fire that was not human, her beauty a mask over something ancient and terrifying. The doors slammed shut behind him, and the sound echoed like a final sentence. The human's chest tightened. Whatever was coming, it would not be mercy. The cell was silent, except for the drip of water somewhere in the shadows. He sat on the cold stone bench, wrists bound by glowing cuffs that hummed faintly. The guards outside never spoke, never moved, their armored figures like statues in the flickering violet light. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time slipped away without meaning. Hunger twisted his stomach, but fear kept him awake. He could not forget the Countess's words, eternal youth, his blood, his body. Voices broke the silence. Two servants passed close to the door, their tones hushed but urgent. He leaned forward, straining to hear through the crack in the wall. "She is weaker," one whispered. "Her skin shows lines again. If the ritual fails, she will wither." "It cannot fail," the other hissed. "She has found a human. Their bodies carry what ours cannot. It is the only way. The Countess will drink and rise again." Their steps faded down the corridor, leaving him frozen, his heart pounding. So it was true. She was not young. She was old, older than anyone could imagine. Centuries, maybe more. And his life was the price of her beauty. The lock clicked. The heavy door swung open and the guards stepped aside. She entered without a sound, her gown trailing like mist across the floor. The Countess filled the room without effort, her presence heavy as the air before a storm. She was smiling, but her smile was wrong. It carried hunger, not kindness. "You listen well," she said softly, her eyes glowing in the dim light. "Good. It means you understand." He stood slowly, his chains rattling. His voice cracked as he forced words out. "Why me?" She tilted her head, amused. "Why not you? You are strong. You survived the mines, the raids, the journey here. You are different from the others. Your blood carries fire, and fire sustains me." She moved closer, her hand brushing against his arm. He flinched, but the touch lingered, warm and burning at once. "Do not fear me," she whispered, leaning closer. "You will not die. I need you alive. You will be mine." Her words were soft like silk, but the meaning was a chain heavier than any metal. He tried to step back, but the wall stopped him. Her perfume filled the air, sweet and sharp, making his head spin. For a moment it felt as if his body betrayed him, pulled toward her even as his mind screamed to resist. Her eyes narrowed as she studied his face, as though she could see every secret thought. "You feel it," she murmured, smiling wider. "The bond already grows. Soon you will not fight me at all." He forced his voice steady. "I'll never give you what you want." The Countess laughed softly, almost kindly, but her laughter cut deeper than a blade. "Oh, little human," she said. "You already are." She turned away, her gown whispering across the floor. At the door, she paused, her face hidden for a moment in shadow. "Tomorrow," she said, her voice cold and final. "Tomorrow, the ritual begins." The door closed, leaving him in darkness once more. He sank back onto the bench, his body trembling, his mind racing. Escape seemed impossible. Yet in her words, in her need, he found a spark. She needed him alive. She could not kill him. That gave him something, a chance, however small. He clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. If tomorrow was the ritual, then tonight had to be the beginning of his fight. The chamber was filled with a low hum, the kind that vibrated in his bones. He was strapped to a metal table, arms and legs bound with glowing cuffs that pulsed with alien light. Strange machines surrounded him, their surfaces smooth and black, covered with moving symbols that twisted like living ink. Tubes hung above, clear and waiting, their ends sharp like fangs. The air was thick, metallic, with the scent of burning stone and blood. The Countess stood at the center of it all, her gown brighter than before, her skin smooth again, though shadows lingered around her eyes. She lifted her hand, and the machines came alive. The tubes slid down with slow, terrible grace, locking into the ports fixed into his arms and chest. A sudden pull yanked at his veins, and he gasped, his vision flashing white. It was not blood alone being taken. It was something deeper, something that left his muscles weak and his thoughts dizzy. The Countess watched closely, her lips parting as her cheeks glowed with new color. With every drop drawn from him, her skin brightened, her eyes sharpened, her steps grew lighter. She touched her face as if feeling youth return to her bones, and her smile spread wide, sharp with triumph. He groaned, thrashing against the restraints, but the cuffs tightened, burning his wrists. His chest heaved, each breath harder than the last, yet he forced his eyes open, locking them on her. She stepped closer, brushing her fingers against his cheek. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. "Your body pours life into me. You are not being destroyed. You are being made eternal. Through you, I will never fade." Her words struck him like knives. He clenched his teeth, his body trembling under the machine's pull. His head swam, yet in that haze, a realization burned clear. She needed him alive. If she drained too much, she would lose her source. That thought became his anchor, the one thing keeping him from falling into the dark. The Countess leaned closer, her breath warm against his ear. "Do not fight it," she said softly. "You were born for this. You will keep me young forever." He forced a broken laugh through his dry throat. "If you need me so much," he rasped, "then I'm stronger than you think." Her eyes flickered, just for a moment. She pulled back, her smile dimming before returning sharper than ever. She tapped the controls and the machines slowed, the pull easing though the cuffs held him tight. "You learn quickly," she said. "Good, keep that fire, human. I want it to last." She turned away, her gown glowing like liquid light, and the machines detached with a hiss. His body sagged against the table, sweat soaking his skin, his chest burning for air. The guards stepped forward, unstrapped him, and dragged his weakened body back to the cold cell. As the door slammed shut, he collapsed onto the stone floor, his vision blurry, his strength nearly gone. But his mind, though clouded, clung to a single truth. She could not kill him. As long as she needed him, he had power. And power, no matter how small, was enough to plan his escape. The cuffs around his wrists had grown weak from constant use, their glow dimming each time the machines drained him. He studied them in silence, waiting for the right moment. When the guards dragged him back from another draining session, they shoved him into the cell carelessly, assuming his body was too broken to resist. He waited until the door slammed shut, then twisted his arms against the cuffs, pressing hard against the rough stone edge of the bench. Sparks flickered. The binding cracked. With one last push, the metal snapped and his right hand came free. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain, and used the broken piece of cuff as a blade. When the guards entered later with a tray of strange food, he struck without hesitation. The shard plunged into the first guard's throat. The second reached for his weapon, but he swung the chain with all the strength left in him, smashing the alien's head against the wall. Both fell silent, their armored bodies heavy on the floor. He didn't stop to think. He pulled the weapon from the dead guard's belt, a curved blade that pulsed faintly with energy, and ran into the corridor. Alarms wailed almost instantly, a shrill, echoing scream that shook the fortress. Doors opened, shadows moved, and the pounding of boots grew closer behind him. He sprinted, turning down passage after passage until the air itself changed. It grew colder, heavy with a different smell. He slowed, and when he pushed open a door, his stomach twisted. Rows of glass tanks stretched into the darkness, glowing faint green. Inside each tank floated a human. Some were pale and thin, their bodies hollow like empty shells. Others lay motionless, eyes closed forever. A few still breathed, their chests rising weakly as tubes drained them, drop by drop. His throat tightened, rage burning hotter than fear. He smashed the nearest control panel with the stolen blade, and alarms screamed louder as the fluid drained away. One by one, the tanks cracked open. A woman stumbled out, coughing, her body shaking. Another man collapsed, barely alive. He helped them up, his hands trembling but determined. "We're getting out," he rasped, though even he wasn't sure if escape was possible. The freed prisoners clung to him, their eyes wide with fear and hope. But before they could move, the air shifted. A shadow stretched across the tanks, long and sharp. She was there. The Countess stepped into the room, her beauty brighter than before, her skin glowing as if lit from within. The freed humans froze in terror as her eyes swept over them, sharp as blades. "You disappoint me," she said calmly, though the crystals in the walls vibrated with her anger. "I gave you a place in eternity, and you repay me with rebellion?" He tightened his grip on the alien blade, his chest heaving. "You're nothing without us," he spat. Her lips curled into a smile that carried no warmth. "Then I will remind you who holds power." The lights dimmed. The tanks trembled. The Countess raised her hands, and the energy in the room surged, pulling at their very bones. The others cried out, collapsing, their strength draining into her even without the machines. She glowed brighter, her voice sharp as steel. "Did you really think you could run from me?" The Countess's power filled the chamber, pressing against his chest like a storm. The other humans fell to their knees, too weak to resist. He planted his feet and raised the alien blade, refusing to bow. Her eyes fixed on him, and for a moment her smile faltered. She lowered her hands, and the draining pull in the air eased. You are stronger than the rest, she said softly, stepping closer. Her voice no longer thundered. It coaxed, it tempted. Do you see now why you cannot escape me? You and I are bound. Without you, I wither. Without me, you are nothing but a hunted man. Together, we are eternity. He felt his heart hammering, sweat burning his eyes. She was desperate, though she masked it with smooth words. Her beauty was already flickering. Fine lines appeared at the corners of her lips before vanishing again as if she fought to hold her disguise. He understood then. Her youth was a lie held together by his body's strength. I'd rather die than feed you, he growled, raising the blade. But instead of rage, she laughed. You misunderstand, she whispered. This is not death I offer. It is life, riches, power, the loyalty of my court. You would not be a prisoner, but a partner, my chosen, my eternal consort. The freed humans gasped, but he kept his eyes on her. She leaned close, close enough for him to feel the warmth of her breath, close enough that her perfume filled his lungs again. Her hand touched his chest right above his heart, and her voice sank to a whisper only he could hear. Do not pretend you feel nothing. Your fire burns for me already. Let me take it, and I will give it back tenfold. You will live forever at my side. For a heartbeat, her words pressed into his mind like chains, sweet and suffocating. He clenched his fists tighter, forcing the fog away. He saw the cracks in her skin again, the shadow of what she really was. Her illusion faltered under his refusal, and her smile twisted. You think you resist me, she said sharply, stepping back. But every drop I have taken binds you closer to me. You will see. You will beg to remain. The guards burst into the chamber, weapons raised. She lifted her hand, and they froze, waiting for her command. Her gaze returned to him, calm once more, but he saw the tremor in her fingers, the strain in her eyes. She could not survive without him. That truth gave him strength. He lowered the blade slowly, not in surrender but in calculation. Then I'll play your game, he said through clenched teeth. For now. Her smile returned, sharp and victorious. She waved her hand, and the guards stepped back. Wise, she said, her voice smooth again. Prepare him for the next ritual. When it is done, the galaxy itself will kneel. But as they dragged him away, he did not feel broken. He felt a spark of power. Her need was her weakness, and he would turn it against her. The fortress burned with whispers of rebellion long before the first flame lit its halls. He had been moved to a grander chamber now, guarded closely, yet the Countess thought his compliance real. At night, he spoke in secret with the humans he had freed from the tanks. They were weak, but not broken. With stolen blades and stolen courage, they waited for his signal. The Countess grew restless. Her beauty flickered more often, her hands trembling when she thought no one watched. To hide her weakness, she drained her own soldiers, pulling years from their lives in cruel silence. Some collapsed in the corridors, their bodies withered like dry husks. Fear spread through her court, but none dared to speak against her. When the moment came, it began quietly. A servant slipped him a shard of crystal, sharp enough to cut his bindings. He moved through the shadows, gathering the others. They struck fast, taking weapons, cutting down guards before alarms could rise. For the first time, the fortress echoed with human voices not of despair, but of rage. Fires lit the halls, smoke curling up the walls of crystal as centuries of silence broke into chaos. He led them to the throne room, where the Countess waited. She stood at the heart of the storm, her gown torn but her eyes burning bright. Her skin flickered between youthful perfection and the cracked mask of her true age. Power radiated from her as she drew on the lives of those who still served her, their screams feeding her glow. You dare bring war into my home? She snarled, her voice splitting the air. I gave you eternity and you repay me with fire? He stepped forward, blade in hand, his body trembling from exhaustion yet burning with defiance. You gave us chains. Tonight they break. Her laugh was hollow, broken by fury. She raised her hands and a wave of energy slammed through the hall, throwing men and women to the floor. Yet he stood, staggering but unbent. She saw it and faltered, her fury twisting into something like fear. You belong to me, she screamed, half her face smooth, half withered. Without me, you are nothing. He lifted the stolen blade high, the firelight dancing across its edge. Then I'll show you what nothing can do. The rebels surged behind him, voices raw, hearts alight. The fortress shook as humans and aliens clashed, and the throne room became a battlefield. The Countess roared, her power tearing stone and crystal alike, but even as she struck, her body faltered. She was strong, but she was desperate, and desperation was a wound he could use. The throne room blazed with fire and screams, the crystal walls cracking under the weight of battle. He charged through the chaos, cutting down a guard who stood in his way, his stolen blade humming with stolen power. The Countess stood on the shattered steps of her throne, her beauty now a mask broken in two, half radiant youth, half rotting age. Her eyes burned with desperation as she reached for him, her voice shaking the air. "You cannot kill me," she cried, her words more plea than command. "Without me, you are lost. Without you, I am dust. We are bound." He climbed the steps, his chest burning, his muscles failing, but his will sharper than the blade in his hand. She lunged at him with inhuman speed, her claws raking across his arm, but he didn't fall. She pressed her lips to his skin, trying to drain him one last time. Heat tore through his body, his strength pulled from his veins, but he roared and drove the blade into her chest. The Countess's scream split the fortress. Light poured from the wound, cracking through her skin like glass. Her hands clawed at him, then at the blade, then at nothing. Her body crumbled, dust scattering into the air. The throne pulsed once, then shattered, sending shards across the floor. The humans stared in stunned silence. The guards who remained dropped their weapons, their courage gone with their mistress. He pulled the blade free and stumbled, blood soaking his arm back, but he stayed on his feet. "It's over," he rasped. The fortress groaned, walls splitting as the crystal core collapsed without her power to hold it. He shouted for the others, dragging the weak and wounded through the burning halls. Together they fled into the night, the ground shaking as the palace of the Countess fell behind them in thunder and flame. Outside, under a sky filled with alien stars, the survivors gathered. Their faces were gaunt, scarred, but alive. They looked to him, waiting. He had no crown, no throne, only the blade in his hand and the fire still in his eyes. "She's gone," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. "And we are free." The words carried into the night, and for the first time, silence felt like hope. But in the pit of his chest, he knew this was not the end. The Countess was only one, and others like her might still hunger in the dark. And if they came, they would find him waiting.